Everyone, welcome to another interesting day on planet Earth. I wanted to give you a little bit of an update because this week I was invited into the Gururi Grabavoy Academy to do a presentation, and a lot of people had never met me before, so I wanted to give them a little bit of a background as to the topic and why I had picked the topic, which was called A Wrinkle in Time. So some of you know who are in our community. I was a practitioner and I was working with women, particularly on emotional issues. And I had a beautiful process that I used to take people through to help to shift and collapse where their thinking was in from a lopsided perception to a real quantum perception of how life is always supporting them. And while I was a practitioner, I started to see number sequences and I saw also matrices, and I had no idea what to do with this. Why was I seeing matrices? Was it like latitude and longitude points? I didn't know what to do with number sequences. So I just went with my intuition as what to do. And when Brian, my husband, mentioned about Guguri Grabavoy's number sequences, I immediately jumped in and thought, this is my chance to understand about why I've been showing numbers. Anyway, fast forward. We've done a lot of training along the way. We've been trained with many different teachers. And one of the things that we really resonated with was when one of the teachers showed us about using the time and space matrix, and how, in fact, our whole reality is based on time and space. And this really hit a chord with me. And I thought, wow, gosh, I'm getting onto something really new in the quantum field here. And so I'd like to just share something that I spoke about the other day. And let me just grab my presentation so I just show you something and this was based on Grigori Grabavoy's work called Time Control. It's one of his lectures, and it's a pretty easy read, and it gives you a bit of an understanding. And I'm not going to go into that, but I was talking about the different dimensions that we have, because most of us, when we see things, even though we're in the 3D, but we look at things sometimes from two-dimensional. So, for instance, you're on the screen here, you're only looking at things from a two-dimensional perspective. And here we are in 3D. We've got the extra dimension of width that we observe things. And then I spoke about the fourth dimension, and we're told about we're moving to the fourth and fifth dimension. But what does that mean? Well, when you're in a fourth dimensional place, a bit like the perspective from your soul and the creator, you are the observer of what happens. And you're outside the situation, but you are still influenced by it because you are perceiving it and you make a judgment, and etc. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a snapshot on that. But what we were working with the other day was the matrix here, the 2D matrix, and just for a simple little exercise. And I pointed out to them, it's the same process that happens when you regrow organs. Now, when your organ is taken out, physically it's taken out, but energetically it still exists, as if there is a phantom organ still there. That's why people, when they cut off have their arms or legs cut off, they say, I still feel it, because energetically it still exists. Now, you grew your organs. It wasn't anyone else. Your mother was like the oven, the incubator, but you grew the organ. And why was that? Because at every organ and every cell, but every organ in our body has a point of creation where life comes to sparks and the whole organ starts to grow. And so that information about growing the organ didn't go anywhere when you were born. It still exists there. So when an organ is taken out, you can use stem cells, and I'm not talking about stem cells that they do in medical procedures. I'm talking about using the stem cells in the what Grabovoi calls the temporal realm, but the invisible, the spiritual realm. And you take a stem cell from your spine and you place it into the point of creation of the new organ. Now you'll say, well, I'm not sure where the stem cells and what they look like, but we're working on the spiritual level. We're not working on the see with my eyes physical level. And so the next question is quite often is, so where's this point of creation? Well, that's also something that is a very left brain question. And from a soul perspective, your soul knows where it is, your consciousness knows where it is. But if you're practicing, you'll start to notice in this phantom organ that there's an area that little lights up, and this is where you put the stem cell. And you start to see the stem cells start to multiply. And as the process goes on, you start to watch the organ in the spiritual realm start to take shape. Now, one of our community regrew her surgically removed ovaries, all medically documented, and she spent about 15 minutes a day going through the process of seeing it in the spiritual realm happening. And then at the same time, she was feeling it happening. And then it turned up and she said, I just knew it hit me in the heart. It was done. So there is a little bit involved with this. And obviously, you need to have a full understanding of why it can happen. That's why we always give you the foundation of Grabovoy's teachings before anything else, because until you can understand how in time and space things can be created, why they can be created, and the process to doing it, you're probably working off the left brain approach to it, and then it takes such a long time. Having said that, the person that regrew her ovaries, it did take her some dedication every day for about 3 months before she noticed that it was done. And let me just say, when she went to the doctor, she didn't say, I'd regrown my ovaries. She just said, I think I've got an issue. I had an issue, earlier in my life, and I think there's still an issue. And she ended up having 3 scans, which proved that, and the doctor said, there is nothing wrong. You've got perfectly healthy ovaries. But if we go back and have a look at this matrix and we look at it on the left-hand side, every cell, every organ, every system, everything, even your finances, has a dimension of time and space, because time and space represent the physical reality. So here we have 80 dimensions of time and space, meaning there are 8 horizontal boxes representing time and 10 of space vertically representing space. So time and space. Now, I was discussing space with people the other day because Earth time, which is time and space, and space time, which is space time, is very different, because space time is measured in light years. And so, for instance, the nearest star to Earth, Alpha Centauri, if it was to explode, you wouldn't see that for at least 4 space years. And as I said, space years are very different to Earth years. For instance, if you were to travel tens of thousands of distance in space, you could probably still see the light of the events of things like 9/11 that still affect us currently in the here and now. And that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, why I'm mentioning this is because often the events from our past, and even if we think about this week, the events that happened to you yesterday and the day before, where do they go? Do they just sort of go off into the ether? I mean, there were people and situations and things that really did happen that caused you to have different reactions, or the body was experiencing different things. Where does it go to? Well, it still sits as the light of an event in space that still affects you in the here and now. And that's why a lot of people, when they are moving through some blockages in their life, often see things that keep reoccurring. And I can't understand, why have I still got this theme going on? It's because the light of that information that's not in harmony is still shining into now, because we don't live in a flat plane. We don't live in a box. We live in a toroidal field where the past and the future are always moving into now. So I'll give you a little example of what happened when I had some fraudulent activity happen on a credit card. And so there were two separate cards, two separate fraudulent activities. And Brian had given me two $50 notes, and they had disappeared, and I hadn't even been anywhere. So to me, I could start to see a pattern. And so I decided to contact a friend of mine just to get for him to give me another perspective. And he's also trained in grab a voice work. And I said to him, I've had this activity happen. What do you suggest? And he said, well, why don't you pull up your financial matrix? Now, to me, in my inner world, the vision that I get is a bit like how you pull up a file on a screen. And my financial matrix came exactly like you're seeing in that 2D picture here. And he said to me, what are you noticing in the matrix there representing your finances? And I said, oh, look, there's little black bombs all over it. And he said, well, how are you going to solve that? And my consciousness, my soul was just showing me what I needed to do. And I said, oh, well, I'm seeing little silver white spheres with the number sequence 91688 transferring from negative to positive, and they're raining down on the little black bombs. The black bombs are exploding, and the whole space is becoming lighter. And then we're chatting a little bit further, and he said, and what else are you noticing? And I said, well, I'm noticing that on the bottom part of this image, it's ripped, like somebody's ripped a piece of material. And he said, what are you going to do with it now? And with that, a gold needle and a gold thread turned up. And I joked with him and I said, well, maybe I'm supposed to sew it up. And so in my imagination, I was seeing myself sewing up the matrix, restoring the matrix. And then when I looked at it, the whole area of the cross sections of time and space were all glowing golden. And my colleague said to me, so how does that feel? What are you noticing? And I said, I feel a bit lighter around me. And anyway, very shortly after that, there was some money came into the business. Things started to flow again. So for me, when I see that there is issues in the outer world with the flow of money, I pull up my financial matrix and look at, are there any distortions in the field? Is there something that I need to collapse or remove to help to give the flow of finances a place where they're not being hindered? And quite often our thinking hinders that as well. So I like to play with the fabric of time and space. It became my little area of expertise, the part that I enjoy most. And we do a lot of playing in our community. We don't work because we've all been taught how to work. We play. And I was reminded as I was presenting to this group, the rest of my presentation, just how lucky that we came on this understanding about how to use time and space, that we were able to teach the rest of our community who've studied with us, either online and in person. Because when you can play in this way, it's a bit like being in 4D, the observer. You're observing the distortion. And in the steps of changing reality, Grabovoi says, first you perceive the distortion. You don't get into the events. You don't unpack it. You don't have emotions about it. Because as soon as you have the emotions, you're actually hooking energetically into that. It's still connected to you. So he says, so for instance, for me, the little black bombs were the distortion. And then I have to, secondly, label what is that I wanted to do. So transformation of the distortion from negative to positive, to the flow of finances, for example, to the creator's norm. So that was my objective. And then how did I change that? Well, when I saw little silver white spheres with a number sequence, which is the creator's norm, what happened is the color affected it, the shape affected it, and all of a sudden, all the information in that was changed. And so there are other little steps in changing reality. For instance, I could have imagined a big sphere right around the whole matrix with the number sequence, and you can choose any number sequence you like that relates to your objective. And then I could have changed the color of the silvery white sphere, for instance, to electric violet, which seems to neutralize that beautiful electric purple that neutralizes information. And then I could have shrunk it down to a tiny dot. And what I've done is changed the original information so it no longer sits as distortion. I've identified it, I've labeled it, I've created a sphere around it. Now I've deformed it. Can no longer sit there as the original information stuck in time and space as a distortion affecting me in the physical reality. And so when things like that happen, this is where I pull up my matrix, and I know many people have issues with money at the moment. And a distortion, as I said before, can be your thinking. So one of the things that holds it up is when people say, well, I've done the control now. When is it going to turn up? When I'm going to see the money? And you don't understand then how things work from the spiritual realm to the physical realm. Even the Creator created time as a way for us to resolve some of our tasks. And maybe one of your tasks is you've got low self-worth or you lack trust, and getting into some practice and then getting to the point of going, I've done all I can in the spiritual realm, and now I'm just waiting for it to turn up in the physical realm, but without wondering how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't repeat this every day as a process. You absolutely can, because your thinking will get in the way from that. But even if we were looking at it from a global perspective, if this matrix of time and space represented the global financial system, and I don't often talk about doing it, what I would say a macro control, but let's just, from this point of view, think we're looking at the matrix of the global financial system. What do you notice in that? And you can go through the similar process, but the more you can let your intuition, your consciousness show you images, and you go with that as the reality that you need to, then you'll start to really tap into the spiritual realm, where that's where we should be putting a little bit more attention than trying to fix it in the physical realm. Because if you think about the global financial system at the moment, and it's just you sitting behind the computer, you would think, well, what can I do? There's only me, and there's a big mess out there. So this is why it's important, first of all, just to clear up your own stuff, because even starting from that point of view, what you're saying is, this might be going on in the outer world, but here I take control of my own resource, my finances, and I give it all the opportunity for it to flow in. Now, it doesn't mean that you sit there and meditate and wish and hope that money will come out of thin air. Of course, you still are in a physical body and we're still living in reality. So there has to be an exchange. And this happens, the law of conservation, cause and effect as well. So we need to still act. It's not going to come and drop as a pot of gold on your lap. We still need to act as if we're allowing the flow of money to come to us without us getting in the way. Anyway, there was a lot more that we went into, and I love playing with this particular control when we get into training with a group, because we do it with a whole lot of different things, and they get to feel a shift. They really get to feel a shift in and around the physical body, even to the point of people who come in with a headache, and they've got a massive headache. And we play with this. What's happening in your physical matrix? Let's have a look at it. Let's change it. And so there's lots of ways to play with that. And anyway, I hope you got something out of this today. And I hope you have a good week. Clear your matrix. Bye.